Eala just dropped a comment that nobody saw coming, and it has tennis fans talking for all the wrong reasons. After beating Elena Rybakina at the Berlin Open, the young Filipina star looked her opponent's resume dead in the eye and basically said rankings don't tell the real story. She's the one to beat, Eala said, talking about a player who isn't even ranked world #1. Aryna Sabalenka holds that spot. So why would Eala say something like this about Rybakina instead? Stick around, because the answer says a lot more about Eala's mindset than it does about the rankings page. Let's rewind to the match itself, because this was not a clean, comfortable win. Eala found herself down 4-1 in the very first set against a former Grand Slam champion and the current world #2. For most players, that's the kind of hole you don't climb out of against someone with Rybakina's firepower. But Eala did exactly that. She clawed her way back, found her rhythm, and ended up dismantling one of the most dangerous servers on tour in just 1 hour and 32 minutes. That is not a fluke. That is a statement. And here's where it gets personal. The moment Eala converted match point, cameras caught her doing something most players save for backstage, not center court. She picked up her phone and called home. "I called my dad," she admitted afterward with a huge grin. "I just said, oh my God, we were just screaming. My mom was there too. I'm really happy." There's something refreshing about a player at this level still treating a massive win like a family event instead of just another line on a stat sheet. It tells you this victory actually meant something to her, not just professionally, but personally. When she finally sat down for her post-match interview, Eala admitted she was still running on adrenaline. "I'm a little foggy right now, I'm still shaking, and I was shaking on match point too," she said. Even with the nerves, she stayed grounded about how close the match really was. "I'm really happy with today. Of course it could have gone either way. There were really key moments in both sets, and she is an amazing player." Then came that headline-worthy line again, calling Rybakina the player to beat, before adding she was glad to share the court with her once more. Now, why would a player say that about someone who isn't the top-ranked woman in the world? Here's the context that makes it click. Eala has now faced Rybakina twice in her career, and both matches have been brutal, high-level battles. Compare that to Sabalenka, who Eala has never even played on the WTA Tour. When you've actually traded blows with someone twice, beaten them once and lost to them once, that rival starts to feel a lot more real than a name sitting at the top of a list you've never personally tested yourself against. Rankings are numbers. This was lived experience talking. Speaking of that history, their first meeting happened earlier this year in Rome, and Rybakina took that one. Berlin was the rematch, and this time Eala squared the head-to-head at 1 win each. To pull that off, she had to dig out of that rocky for one start, and during her on-court chat, she explained exactly how she turned things around. "She really started on fire. She came out hot. I think I was able to get a couple of free points off my serve, and that helped." Then she added the detail that explains so much about the turnaround. "She hit I don't know how many aces in those first few games, so just getting the ball in play became a massive advantage for me." That's a pretty clever read of the situation. Instead of trying to outpower one of the biggest servers in the women's game, Eala simply focused on survival, on getting balls back, on staying in points long enough to let her own game take over. It's a small adjustment that ended up swinging an entire match. Before wrapping up, the interviewer asked Eala about her return game, something that's quietly become one of the best on the entire WTA Tour. Her answer was almost philosophical. "You have to give yourself grace while also being brave," she said. "For me, returning, and honestly my game in general, the word I'd use is brave. It makes a huge difference when I'm able to actually do that." Grace and bravery in the same sentence might sound like a strange combination for a tennis return, but if you watch that comeback from 4-1 down, you understand exactly what she means. That bravery is about to be tested again, and fast. Eala's next opponent is Elina Svitolina in the quarterfinals, and somehow, despite both being established names on tour, the two have never faced off in singles. There is some shared history though. Back in January, at the ASB Classic, Eala teamed up with Iva Jovic in doubles and beat Svitolina's doubles pairing in straight sets. So there's familiarity there, just not the singles kind. Now that changes. Friday, June 19th marks the first time Eala and Svitolina will ever share a singles court, with a semi-final spot on the line. Given what Eala just pulled off against a former champion and the current world #2, you'd be foolish to assume she walks into this one as the underdog. She's shown she can fight back from a slow start, she's shown she can solve a big serving opponent in real time, and she's shown she treats pressure as fuel rather than friction. It's also worth zooming out for a second, because this Berlin run is part of a bigger pattern with Eala this season. This win over Rybakina was her 5th career victory over a top 10 player, and that number matters more than it might seem at first glance. Beating a top 10 player once can be written off as a great day. Beating 5 of them is a trend. It tells you this isn't a one-off upset against a player who happened to be off form. Rybakina was serving rockets in that first set, looked completely in control at 4-1, and Eala still found a way to turn the match inside out. That kind of result usually comes from a player who genuinely belongs in these conversations, not one who is simply riding a hot streak. There's also something worth noting in the way Eala talks about her opponents. Plenty of players, when asked about rivals, default to diplomatic, almost rehearsed answers. Eala's response about Rybakina felt different. It came across as genuine respect built from actually competing against someone twice in big moments, not just admiration from a distance. That distinction matters in tennis, where head-to-head experience often shapes a player's mental approach far more than a ranking number ever could. Sabalenka may sit at the top of the standings, but until Eala actually steps on a court against her, that rivalry remains theoretical. Rybakina, on the other hand, is now a rival built on real sets, real comebacks, and real scoreboard pressure. So as Friday approaches, the questions multiply. Can Eala carry this same bravery into a completely new matchup against Svitolina, a player with vastly more experience on the biggest stages of the sport? Will that doubles familiarity from January give her any kind of mental edge, even though singles tennis is an entirely different animal? And perhaps most interestingly, if Eala keeps producing results like this one in Berlin, how long before people stop debating who the one to beat really is, and simply start including her name in that conversation too? For now, all eyes turn to Friday's quarter-final. One thing already feels certain after watching that comeback against Rybakina: whatever happens against Svitolina, Eala is not going to back down from the moment. If grace and bravery really are her guiding words, this next match is shaping up to be the perfect stage to prove it all over again.